Hello, good day, everyone. I am very excited to be in your space today. Today, we'll be looking at Scrum Made Simple, a beginner's guide. On this beginner's guide, I'll be walking you through Scrum Theory, Scrum Values, and we'll be diving deep into some of the sections that has to do with the various meetings that are held in the Scrum process. So without much ado, I will be walking you through those. Okay. On our agenda, as previously highlighted, we'll be looking at what is Scrum, Scrum theories, Scrum values, Scrum team roles, Scrum events, Scrum artifacts, and we'll be putting everything together so that it makes sense to a beginner. And quizzes will be also set in the course of this training. Please open up your mind, as I hope that you will learn something new. So the first question we want to ask ourselves is, what is Scrum? So before the creation of Scrum, prior this time, software were developed using the waterfall approach. So I will go on to that section so that I highlight what the waterfall approach is. Using Miro software, I've created something there. So on here you can see that we've got our traditional waterfall. Okay, if I highlight, make it a little bit larger. Okay, you can see if you are creating a software, what you need first is to gather your requirements. So that is your requirement gathering. Then the developers will do what they call system design, where they design the requirements that have been gathered, make meaning out of it, so that they can be able to execute the project. So the execution process, this has to do with the implement and development of the software project. So for example, you want to create an e-commerce software, you will gather the requirements by speaking to the business analyst and the product owner on the requirements that will be needed to accomplish this set tasks. So in the previous days, they will have to go through this process with the team. So they do the design and they do the implementation, and the software is run, test the codes and everything to verify if the software is properly running. Then deployment and delivery of that code, that is the full software itself. Then where there are needs for new versions and maintenance to be done, these are done on the maintenance section. That is for the traditional waterfall approach, that is using water falling from a mountaintop where it comes in levels. So but in this Scrum methodology, we do things incrementally. So instead of you running the project from start to end before finding out that there are bugs or there is need for change in requirements by the client, giving feedback on what has been produced, the team came up with a more agile approach where they can showcase what has been done to the clients and improve on certain deliverables that have been delivered by the development team. So on this section, you have the scope where the development team is briefed by the product owner on the objective of the project, and that objective is used to create their user stories, which are passed into the product backlog. After passing that into the product backlog, the product owner arranges a meeting with the designers, that's the development team, to look into the user stories that have been created for that very project, falling back on the project objective. Okay, then the team look into it and come up with a design that they think is viable for that deliverable to be accomplished. So they enter into a meeting, which is the sprint planning meeting, where they discuss what needs to be done, how they are going to go about the execution of that deliverables. So they are talking about on the minimum viable product, where they will be delivering a certain feature of that e-commerce project. So that is then passed into the sprint backlog, where the team will do give values to the different user stories that have been formulated by the product owner. So that will be looked into by the team. They will decide, okay, what is the level of effort that is needed to execute a certain user story that has been formulated, or an epic. What is the time bound that they need? What is the level of difficulties that they might face in the course of execution? These are considered using the Fibonacci's value from 1 to 13. So that approach is used to value those user stories. That is then passed into the sprint backlog, where the team will have to execute those very deliverables. So for every day, the team is required to have their daily scrum, where they talk about what was done the previous day and what they will be doing on this very day, what are the blockers they faced, and how to navigate their way through the day tasks. Okay, then on here, after they've completed the project within the sprint, so the sprint, this is the sprint. Within the sprint, it could be between 2 weeks to 4 weeks. That is, the maximum will be 1 month. So it must not exceed 1 month. So after they've executed the project, they go to the stakeholder to discuss what they have accomplished in terms of maybe completing a certain epic, and they present that epic from the sprint backlog that was presented. They present it to the stakeholders. So the stakeholders look at that information. They look at the minimum viable product that has been presented to them. They might have 1 or 2 issues that they might raise, or if not, if they are okay with what has been presented, it is classified as done, then they put that into their increment for that sprint. After that has been done, the team goes back to have a meeting. So that meeting is called the sprint retrospect, where they discuss the process on which they adopted to successfully execute that minimum viable deliverables. Okay, so on here they discuss what are the blockers, what are the things they didn't do properly, how to improve on their team efficiency. That is done in the sprint retrospect. meetings. Okay, so after doing that, that improves on their approach towards delivering their subsequent minimum viable minimum viable products on the future sprints. So you send out these usable softwares to the end users, which is now used by them, while the other sprints are worked into. So they go back to the starting again, work on the scope for this next sprint, take certain features from the product backlog, do their design, and do the same approach again and again until the total project is accomplished. That is for the Scrum Framework approach. So you can see a similarity on what I have discussed on that section, where you've got your waterfall approach from the starting to the end on the project. But here you've got sprints where you send out increments of minimum viable products to the end users in each sprint. So you've got your sprint 1, your sprint 2, and your sprint 3 for this very project. So that is what I just want to show on this section, so that we appreciate what we will be talking on today. So let's go back to our slide so that we can appreciate what the Scrum is. So looking at the definition, Scrum is a live framework for solving complex problems. So like I rightly point out, that is a complex problem that has been divided into bits, and they are dealt with incrementally. Okay, so on here you've got helps the team generate value through adaptive solution built on transparency, inspection, and adaptation. So now the team will work in an environment where they are transparent to the stakeholder. They state the issues that they are facing. If they've got any, they present to the stakeholder what they've done, and if the stakeholder has got any concern, they easily raise it in that very sprint place. So if there is an issue on here, they raise it, and this is passed back into the product backlog for the product grooming. Okay, so you can see we've got simple rules, flexible application, and on the side note we've got think of Scrum as a recipe book. It gives you ingredients and structure, but you can adapt flavor. Scrum in action. So we are going to be using the bakery scenario, where the stakeholder requires the bakers to come up with a flavor for them. So imagine a bakery launching a new cake flavor. On this case, the product owner decides the flavor direction when he or she has come up with the user stories. Then the developers experiment with the recipes. So they do that's the person doing the preparation of the dough, the caterer, do all that testing sections and all that to make sure they get the right recipe for the stakeholder, while the Scrum Master ensures the team follows the process and improves on the existing process. So that is the Scrum in action. So Scrum Theory. Scrum Theory is built on empirism, that is decision from experience. Okay? And Scrum Theory is built on lean thinking, reducing waste on essentials. So we try as much as we can to reduce waste in the course of executing the software projects. And we use a iterative incremental approach in the course of execution, as I have rightly pointed out on this section. Okay? And the Scrum Theory pillars is transparency, inspection, and adaptation. You have to be transparent. You have to inspect as you are executing the software project or any project that you are applying this theory to, and you have to be adaptable in terms of when the stakeholder comes up with other requirements, as long as it's within the scope of the project, that can be implemented. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So let's look through transparency, as I've previously explained. Transparency, work must be visible to all stakeholders. There should be a shared understanding between the team and the stakeholders to reduce risk. So the team should be able to elaborate what they have done, and if there is any concern, the stakeholders should also point their concerns out to the team, and they should at some point come to a common ground where such concerns are resolved before proceeding to the next sprint. So clear artifact, better decisions. Okay, we've got inspection. So inspection has to do with frequent checks on progress and artifacts. So you're doing your sprint retrospect, you're doing your review with the stakeholders. That will help to create some level of confidence between both parties. Detect problem early. Without adaptation, inspection is pointless. So without the ability for the team to act in a fluid manner, there is no need to inspect, because when you inspect and you find that there is an issue and that issue is raised and there is no room for correction, then what is the need to inspect in the first place? So that's what we are talking about on this section. Adaptation, adjusting process when the results deviate. Team adapt as soon as learning occurs. When they found out that, okay, we are using a rectangular button for the software, and we found out that the stakeholder prefers a circular button, the team should be able to adapt and implement. So that's what we are talking about on that section. Okay. Scrum values. So the Scrum values is made of 5, which are commitment, focus, openness, respect, and courage. So commitments on the real life approach. How do we explain commitments? So if the team has come together and decided that for each sprint they'll be having to deliver their sprint every 2 weeks, they should be able to see through that that promise is met. That is their commitment. They should prioritize the testing over new decoration. So being able to present what they have done to their stakeholders, make sure that the requirements are met. Okay? They should share feedback openly. should be open with their feedback. Each baker's skill is valued. Each baker's skills is valued. So everybody in the team should be valued. Try bold new flavors. So on here we'll be talking about the Scrum team overview. So the Scrum team consists of the Scrum Master, the product owner, the developers, as I've previously highlighted. It is usually a small, self-managing, cross-functional team, and there is no sub-team, no hierarchy. And it is the main goal for the team is to focus on a single product goal. Okay? So today, this is what we'll be looking at. On our subsequent training, we will dive deep into other aspects of the Scrum. Okay, we'll be looking at the developer, we'll be looking at the Scrum Master, we'll be looking at the product owner. Okay, so thank you for your time, for your continual encouragement and the messages. Please do well to subscribe to our channel as continually reiterate on our training, as this encourages us to do more for the project management community. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you on this one.